Dr. Jonas Salk, Exploration of Polio, His Encounters with It, and the Exchange of Its Vaccine. National History Day 2016, by Isabella Zuccaroli. I can remember the ambulance coming, and they took me out into a room and put me in an iron lung. I don't remember much of what my body felt like, other than the pain I felt when someone tried to move me. Well, I was 2 years old, and as a 2-year-old you don't remember much, but I remembered a lot about this situation, because all of a sudden I had this cold or flu that was worse than I had ever experienced. So when you think about that, most 2-year-olds don't remember their illnesses, but this was so powerful, I was literally just flattened, maybe for a week, where I couldn't move at all. Once it subsided, I couldn't walk anymore. These people are talking about their horrific memories of having the polio virus. Polio was a highly infectious viral disease that affected the central nervous system and caused temporary or permanent paralysis. This devastating disease was mostly contracted by children in the 1940s and 1950s. There was no way to prevent it or cure it until Dr. Jonas Salk's breakthrough discovery of a vaccine for the awful disease. Due to Dr. Jonas Salk's exploration, research and encounters with the polio virus, and his discovery and exchange of the vaccine, he saved millions of people from paralysis for life. As I said in the beginning, polio is a highly infectious viral disease that affected the central nervous system and caused temporary or permanent paralysis. This devastating disease was mostly contracted by children, but older people were prone to it too. There are 3 types of polio, but they all have similar symptoms. All 3 types are named after the people in which they were first isolated. The 3 types are Type 1, Brunhilde, Type 2, Lansing, and Type 3, Leon. A more minor case of polio would show flu-like symptoms such as fevers, headaches, sore throats, or fatigue. More serious cases result in paralysis, death, loss of muscle reflexes, and severe muscle pain and spasms. Before the vaccine was developed by Salk, there was no cure for this awful disease. In 1947, Salk became a head of the Virus Research Lab at the University of Pittsburgh. This is where he really began to look closely at the polio virus. Through his beginning research, he discovered that there were 3 main types of polio. In 1948, 2 researchers from Harvard found that polio could grow on scraps of tissue without needing an intact organism. This allowed Salk to grow large amounts of the polio virus to test on. By using formaldehyde, Salk was able to kill the virus but keep it intact enough that it would trigger a response from the body's immune system. Salk began to use a refined vaccine on children who had recovered from polio on July 2, 1952. After the vaccination, it was observed that the children's antibodies increased. After those positive results, Salk began to try the vaccine on volunteers who had not had polio, including himself, his wife, and his children. None of the volunteers got sick, and they all developed antibodies. His research proved to be a success. Salk's exploration back then can be compared to modern-day events. 2 diseases that scientists nowadays are desperately trying to find a way to control are Ebola and Zika. Both of these diseases have awful effects. Ebola has claimed more than 10,000 lives in Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia alone. There are 3 possible vaccinations that are being tested, and scientists are very hopeful. There are 5 main companies racing to be the first to find a cure or vaccination for the Zika virus. Salk was in this very position roughly 60 years ago trying to find a vaccine for polio. The scientists searching for vaccinations for Ebola and Zika are following similar steps to the ones that Salk followed then. Jonas Salk had successfully developed a polio vaccine, and through that he broke the barrier between people and getting vaccinations. Before Salk had developed the polio vaccine, people were apprehensive of getting vaccinations. Salk's development of the polio vaccine caused people to be more comfortable with getting vaccinations. Before 1950, a child under the age of 6 would have received 7 vaccinations in all. Now, children receive over 36 vaccinations before the age of 6. This graph shows how many vaccinations are received by children under the age of 6 in different countries. Dr. Jonas Salk is one of the reasons why vaccines are so widely used and popular all around the world today. By developing a polio vaccine, Salk also made an encounter with the people of the world by protecting them. This polio virus was such a devastating sickness because it didn't only affect a small group of people, but a huge majority. Polio wasn't just something that poor people got. It paralyzed one of the most powerful American figures at its time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. In a note from Roosevelt to a doctor, he says, "For the following 2 weeks, I had to be catheterized, and there was slight, though not severe, difficulty in controlling the bowels. The fever lasted for only 6 or 7 days, but all the muscles from the hips down were extremely sensitive to the touch, and I had to have the knees supported by pillows." The number of cases of polio reached a high of over 55,000 cases in the early 1950s. Many had the symptoms described by FDR. Thanks to Salk's research, polio was nearly eradicated by the 1960s. He was recognized as a national hero and was also awarded many awards, including one by the President himself, Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Before I hand you this citation, I should like to say to you that when I think of the countless thousands of American parents and grandparents who are hereafter to be spared the agonizing fears of the annual epidemic of poliomyelitis, when I think of all the agony that these people will be spared as they see loved ones suffering in bed, I must say to you, I have no words in which adequately to express the thanks of myself, all the people I know, and all 164 million Americans, to say nothing of all the other people in the world that will profit from your discovery. I am very, very happy to hand this to you.
After all the challenges of developing the polio vaccine had been faced, Salk exchanged his findings with the world and told them all about his breakthrough discovery. The news of the newly developed vaccine was announced on April 12, 1955, in a press conference. It became headline news after that. In an interview with Salk, he explained the development of the polio vaccine and the side effects of it to the people of the world.
It appears now that we have a practical means for inducing antibody formation to poliomyelitis virus. That is, to the 3 types of poliomyelitis virus. Now, this antibody is the substance that is present in the bloodstream that is presumed to furnish protection.
Have you found any ill effects at all from it?
There haven't been any whatever. We've had neither sore arms, nor any fever, nor aching, nor any of the usual things that one sometimes encounters, even with diphtheria immunization and tetanus immunization and the other immunizations that are given to children.
Salk's exchange of this vaccine with the world is still affecting us today. Recently, August 11, 2015, marked 1 year since the last wild polio case was discovered on the whole African continent. The only countries where polio transmission has never been interrupted is Pakistan and Afghanistan. Hopefully in the future, these countries will become polio-free too. In conclusion, I'd like to say that Dr. Jonas Salk was an extremely influential figure in history. Salk did extensive exploration and research of the polio virus. He made an encounter with the people of the United States and the world by protecting them and getting them to be more comfortable with getting vaccinations. And finally, he exchanged his research and development of a breakthrough vaccine by sharing it with the world. Because of Dr. Jonas Salk, the world is nearly eradicated of the devastating polio virus.